Hey guys, Analog Man here, back for another deck profile, and this is actually on my updated security control deck that I've actually been tinkering with since BT6 began a month ago. I've been trying to basically find a good build to work with. Originally, I went with a Beelstar control, as you saw from a previous video that I posted. Beelstar control is very solid, but the problem with the deck is that it relies way too much on Beelstar and the removal cards, essentially. It is great having removal, but it is great having removal, but at the same time, the deck, how do I describe it? It has a hard time. I've noticed that it has a very hard time against Jesmon. Jesmon is a really powerful deck as of right now in BT6. It's one of the top three decks, along with the Bond decks, essentially. And Jesmon is probably our worst matchup aside from maybe Aguban. Aguban doesn't really run Delicate Plan. Delicate Plan essentially is the bane of this deck. And I've found a weird solution to that, and essentially it's more. I mean, like you'll see it when I show off what's in the deck, but just from looking at this TK already, you already know that it's going to be based around yellow essentially. And the deck did work out today. I actually got third place using this deck today, and it was actually pretty good. My matchups were really weird, honestly, because my first matchup was actually against Black Ragna, which I have not seen in a long time. The last time I saw it was pre BT4, and it's crazy how that deck just kind of disappeared, and then I just randomly saw it today. Game two, I actually played against Lilifloof. Uh, Lilifloop, my bad, sorry. Lilifloop is still very scary with the fact that they have Mega Fusion and the fact that the build that I was playing against, they were running Demonic Disaster. So they essentially, thanks to Blackworld Growlmon and that, they unsuspended twice. I honestly got super lucky in that final hit because he hit right into an Iron Fist onslaught and that killed it. And luckily, the rest of his board could not essentially get through a specific blocker that I run in this deck. So it kind of clutched the match for me. But aside, and then I ended up playing Imperial last round. The only reason I honestly lost that matchup because Imperial is such a it's still a very good OTK deck, but the problem is that security control has so many checks for it now that it's not even really a threat anymore. But if you brick, it becomes a huge deal because you're not able to essentially get rid of their board and or heal up your security. So just be on the lookout for that. But anyway, yeah, let's get into the deck profile. This is a really weird deck profile. This is my own personal build. I may be changing it in after this video because, as I said, there were some bricking issues and there were some inconsistency issues with removal showing up in my hand along with healing. So I'm gonna probably the eggs will remain the same, but the deck will change. Some cards just didn't really do it as much because, especially since I played decks that kind of didn't really allow for me to hard play stuff give them 10 memory, it wasn't really great. So I had to kind of clutch it out most of the time in the matches. But anyway, yeah, let's get into it. So let's start with the babies. We're still running 3 Upamon and 2 Bibimon. This is a really solid build. If I had, honestly, if I had another Upamon, I would be running just 1 Bibimon. But for now, this is the ratio I'm going for, and it works pretty well. BB sometimes can get you that extra memory that lets you just play down hard play a security Digimon that lets you pop something or draw something. So it's really solid. Upamon it's really sweet, getting that extra draw. I'm not actually running Salamons in this build at the moment. I'm actually planning to change that because Salamon is still very solid and honestly would have come in clutch a few times today. So I will be trying to figure out a way to fit them in somehow. So I will be posting a updated one after this one. But I just wanted to show off my third place one that I got today. Anyway, these are all the babies. It starts, this deck, as I said, does not run any level 3s, so let's just start off with the level 4s. First off, we run 3 Mechanori. This card came in really clutch today. A lot of decks nowadays will try to rookie rush you in a way. It's kind of like most decks' backup option is to rush with rookies, and this hard counters it. If they do not have removal, they have to they cannot get past this. And when they do have removal, they are forced to get rid of this to essentially uh, get through with their little guys. And it's kind of funny because actually in one match they bottom decked my Mechanori, and I'm like, okay, cool, you give me 6 memory, so whatever. So in the end, this guy's really clutch. I'm thinking of either reducing him down to 2 or just keeping him at 3. For now, I like him at 3. 3 is a really solid number, so I'm just keeping him at this for now. I'm running 3 Quadramon. I will be changing this ratio up after this profile because I saw him, but I didn't see him enough. And most security control decks do need more draw power, so having this at 4 would be best. So I will be changing this to 4. But if your preference, if you like 3, 3 is also good too. But I feel like I needed a little bit more draw power in this deck because I was not drawing into what I needed most of the time. So really solid card, helps you draw 2. Then I'm running 3 Geo Greys. I will also be changing the ratio for this card as well because this card was a few times it was a little bit dead because once your opponent knows that you're playing this, they'll start to evolve their rookies up into champions and usually evolve that champion up to a perfect level. So that way this thing is essentially dead. So I'm going to possibly reduce this down maybe to like 2 maybe. So now I'm running exactly 6 of them again, but instead a overemphasis on him. But yeah, for now it's at 3 in this deck. This guy did come. He came in clutch in certain moments, but just not in the moments I needed him. So I will be changing the ratio for this. This guy, on the other hand, was really solid. 4 Magna Angemons. This guy still is amazing. There were multiple times where I would play down a reinforced memory boost, put myself, and then the next turn I would go to 6 and I would hard play this and put my opponent to 1 memory choking them, and that actually got me the game a few times. So this guy is really good at 4. There are some builds that are running 3. I'm kind of considering that because he did get stuck in security like once or twice, but it was still really good. Very solid card. That's all the level 5s we run. We literally only run this level 5 at the moment. I do plan to change the build depending on what the meta shifts to, especially in my locals. My locals is very diverse, so I kind of have to adapt to it. So sometimes I will have to switch out stuff. Um, we're just going to skip straight to the level 6s because that's literally the other cards we run. So I'm running 2 Crania in this, but this guy, he did not really. I honestly did not play him once. He is an amazing card, but the problem is that he does not come up in a lot of situations. So he's decent, but I would highly recommend replacing him with the new BT6 level 6 called Ornismon. Ornismon is really good because it forces your opponent to get rid of him, and the fact that he pops level 5 on summon. And if I had had him instead, if I had had Ornismon instead of him in certain situations, it would have been amazing because this guy is good. He protects Mechanori, but at the same time, Mechanori doesn't really. I noticed with how the current meta is, you don't honestly need that protection sometimes. Crania is already. I mean, the fact that you have to hard play him is already a detriment to your deck. I mean, security control does not care about giving memory, but at the same time, sometimes there are moments where you do now, especially against OTK decks. So having him in your hand is kind of dead. If I had had Ornisma, it would have been really solid. Mechanori already kind of covers a lot of things, so you don't have to worry about getting rookie rushed. But anyway, the MVP, and I mean this, the MVP of today's deck was Sakuyamon. Sakuyamon came in super clutch today. Almost every single deck I played today tried to OTK me, and hard playing this and then evolving on top with this clutched almost most of basically all of my rounds because that -3 security gives you enough time to it forces your opponent to essentially figure out a way to get rid of her before they can push up their guy, and even then if they do, it's going to get -3 security, and and she basically stalls it long enough so that you can kill their big guy next turn if they're dumb enough to essentially swing in or try to push him out and try to swing. That did happen actually, where they pushed out a level 6 and they killed my Geo Gray a few times. That was with my Imperial matchup, and that actually kind of was pretty funny because then I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna remove him next turn. Though the problem is that in this deck, I noticed my current build right now runs slightly less removal because my idea was to run more healing, especially against OTK decks. But I feel like I need to strike a proper balance. But it honestly worked pretty good today. It wasn't bad, but definitely, as I've said in many of my deck profiles, any deck always needs improvement, and there's no issue with switching things up. I honestly, I feel like running this at 4 because this card came in really clutch a lot of times, but at the same time, it can brick insecurity, so I'm kind of iffy on that. It just depends on how I'm feeling with it at the moment. Then for my other level 6, we run 4 Magnadramons. In this build, since we're going for more healing, having this at 4 is really clutch. But at the same time, I highly advise on doing your personal preference with this because this card did actually get stuck in security. Honestly, it was bad luck because that was like the one loss I had today. I went 2-1 with this deck, and this card came in clutch a few times, and I did manage to essentially swing for game with it at one point. So very nice card. At 4, I like it at 4, but I honestly I feel like I like it at 3 at the same time too, so I don't brick into it as much. But it's whatever for now, until I figure out better ratio. And then of course we run the 4 Zwart defeats. Very solid card. This card can sometimes brick into your hands, and it if you're playing security control or any deck that even runs it at 4, it will happen. I'm thinking of maybe reducing it down to 3, but the problem is that then you won't see it enough. But honestly, I don't mind having this because if I had Ornismon or maybe something else, it would have been fine. But for now, it's solid. I like it at 4. It's very good. Surprisingly, I actually saw this more in security today than in my hand. The only time I actually had it in my hand was actually in the third game where I lost to Imperial. But every other one, I had 2 of these in security, and it was amazing. That's all the Digimon we actually run for this deck. We run a very lean amount. Mainly, we want to focus on using the options and healing because that's essentially what security control does as a deck. But at the same time, with how the meta has been shaping, you have to find a balance between them so that you don't end up having too many and not too few Digimon and or option cards. But anyway, let's actually get into the option cards. Of course, we're running the standard for Wyvern's Breath because, of course, minus 15,000 on anybody. DP reduction is still OP, and this is a must-have at 4. I've seen some builds running 3, but I honestly don't like running at 3 because you want to see this ASAP to deal with stuff. Then I've seen builds taking down this to almost 0 or maybe to 2 or 3. I honestly love having this card because it does come in clutch against decks that do not run the delicate plan, so this will save your life more often than it won't. And then, of course, the other MVP of today was Reinforced Memory Boost. This card is still super broken, and for anyone who's seen the news for the fact that they might put up a ban or limit list, I'm honestly expecting this card to either go down to 2 or 1 because it's just so broken. This card is ridiculous, especially if you get it in sequential order. There were 2 matches today that one was a test match and one was actually one of my actual rounds, and I literally hit into this sequentially, like all 4 of these, and I basically put everything into my security, and that made it super overpowered. This card, honestly, I feel like it needs to get hit, but at the same time, I really don't want it to get hit because it's so good in this deck, and I want this deck to continue to be good, at least towards BT7. So yeah, anyway. Then we run 2 Tactical Retreats. I'm still kind of iffy on this because we only run about like 10 security Digimon in total, technically. I do like having it, but at the same time, it can brick your hand, so it's kind of weird. I like it at 2 for now because you see it, but you don't always see it, and then it's really nice to see it in security as well, so really solid. That's all for the yellow option cards. For the black option cards, we run 3 Iron Onslaught, 2 Gewaltz, and 1 Ultimate Flare. Honestly, to explain how these cards are at the moment, it's kind of weird. I honestly want to run four of this because this card came in more clutch than usual. Gawalt Swarmer does come up, but the problem that it doesn't activate in security kind of hurts when it's in security. So I honestly, this card's kind of it's kind of with me. Ultimate Flare also is not very good in PT6 at the moment. The only deck that it honestly really works against is anything that's leveling up, like an OTK deck, like Jesmon, maybe Gabuban, maybe. But even then, you have so much other removal that can stop them. So I feel like Ultimate Flare is kind of a weird choice at the moment. I feel like I might take out this and maybe put out either take out one of this and just put in another Iron Onslaught. Honestly, I feel like this one would be a better thing to take out because once you get this card, it's fine because the thing is with how the deck is, you already have enough removal to get rid of a lot of stuff anyway. So the main thing is that a lot of decks in BT6 focus on one main big boss monster like a level 6. So once you get rid of that one, their deck kind of flounders and you can't really do much about it. So having just these to remove it is already fine as itself. I feel like Ultimate Flare sometimes isn't really even needed either. So either I'm going to put this up to 4 and just keep this at 2 or 3, or actually just keep this at 2 and have this at 4, and it would honestly be fine. Ultimate Flare is good, but it's not the end all that it used to be back in the day. But yeah, these are all the black options we run. We only run about 6 of them. Black options aren't really that big of a thing. I feel like I should be running more, but it's kind of weird. The deck already doesn't really need it. Then I'm playing 3 Izzy and Joes and then 1 TK. Originally I was running 1 Izzy, but Izzy doesn't really do much. Here I can actually swing if my opponent swings in and hits into this, I can look at my security, grab a yellow, heal, and then potentially I can put in a card that can potentially screw them over. So actually experimenting with this today at locals, this was really good. I honestly I kind of want to run more TKs, but the problem is that in my previous build back in BT5, this guy actually cost me games a few times. So keeping this at 1, I like it because 2, you can potentially see it as your second to last security, and if that last security is not yellow, you basically lose the game. So having this at 1 is the perfect ratio, and having Izzy and Joe's to help you boost your memory is really good. I actually had some matches where I would always end at 9 memory, and I would just destroy their board every time. So really solid. Um, but yeah, no, that's basically the deck. The deck at the moment, security control is actually kind of in a weird spot right now because it's still topping, but there's just so many variants that it's actually hard to build the deck essentially. Like there's no essentially with security control, unlike Gabuban, Aguban, and all the top like Jesmon decks, there is no standardized version of this deck yet. In BT5, you had a standardized version. Same with BT4. It's just super standard like McDonald's or BT5 was kind of like a mix of McDonald's with some black cards in. But here with BT6, there's just so many options that like there's so many ways that you can take this deck that it honestly depends on the player. Like for me, my way was to counter Jesmon. Actually, I don't even really need it honestly because there's not really that many people playing Jesmon at the moment. I'm actually surprisingly I'm actually the only player in my group that actually owns a fully built Jesmon deck, which is if you think about it, it's very weird because I'm also the one playing security control, so I'm building a deck to counter my other deck and having that deck counter this deck. So it's very weird, but this deck has so many different variants. Like one can focus on healing, one can focus on removal, one can become Beelstar control. I've actually heard of one that's a Kantaros control deck too, and then I've seen purple, like actual just normal purple control decks that are really broken, and it's just no matter what, this deck will still exist even in PT7. I've actually seen some people in Japan actually top with it, and it's really insane that the deck still continues to live on. And even with Classic Collection, you actually get Piedmon, which pops anything level 4 or lower and gives you a draw off of that. So this deck will continue to be there. It just won't be top tier anymore thanks to hybrids, but it'll still be there in a sense. Or most of the players like me, I will be essentially converting. to yellow hybrid control, which is essentially the same thing as this deck, just mainly focusing on the color yellow rather than multicolored. Which, or actually, for me, I'm actually there's actually a spicy build I've been planning. Once BT6 comes out, I will actually be building that version, and I will be showcasing it on this deck profiles or on this channel. So just be on the lookout for that. And anyway, thank you for watching, and leave any comments to help with, or just any comments if you think that maybe I could change something, maybe add in something. Because as I've said in at the end of every video, I'm always looking to improve this deck. I want it to do good. I want it to excel like today, where I got third place, and potentially deck out people and frustrate them in some way. Because essentially that's what security control is. It's just a frustrating match for your opponent and just you hanging out essentially. But yeah, no. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.